Now, this week, as we mark the 75th anniversary of the formal end of the Second World War, some of our colleagues in BBC News have been sharing their family's experience of wartime. One of the defining campaigns of the war in Asia was in Burma, which is now called Myanmar, which was then part of the British Empire. But the achievements of servicemen who fought there were overshadowed, really, by events in Europe where the war had already ended. Tonight we hear from Reeta Chakrabarti, who discovers more about her father-in-law, Patrick Hamilton, who served in the 14th Army, the multinational force that became known as the Forgotten Army.
The great news ran through the land.
Jubilation across the UK. The war in Europe was finally over. But thousands of miles away in Burma, Allied troops were still fighting a formidable enemy, Japan. My father-in-law, Patrick John Rogers Hamilton, was one of them. He was 23 when World War II started. He grew up in Scotland, but was then sent to join the Indian Army before being deployed in Burma.
That's him there, second row, a smiling face.
At his home in Aberdeen, my brother-in-law Mark recalled his father's enthusiasm for India.
He was thrilled to be there, in a way. Obviously the circumstances were unpleasant. He was delighted that he had the opportunity to go to India. He taught members of the Garhwal Regiment how to play the pipe, so that's quite remarkable.
And I remember when I joined the family, how pleased he was that I was from an Indian family.
Oh, yes.
It mattered.
Patrick's military career had started with the Gordon Highlanders Regiment.
The regiment here is the story of Aberdeen and Aberdeenshire. It's just ordinary folk going to all these places and doing extraordinary things.
Show me some
yeah.
more. Thank you.
So this is the register of soldiers for the Gordon Highlanders, and you can see from this list his service number and the fact that he joined the Gordon Highlanders in August 1940. I've probably done his officer training in India and jungle warfare training in India before he joined the Indian Army.
But Patrick was not long in India. The Japanese had taken neighbouring Burma in 1942, and his regiment became part of the huge 14th Army, which fought to win it back. But it became the Forgotten Army, as Europe's focus was on itself. The men fought in the towns and jungles of Burma in atrocious conditions. Those back home could only imagine the horrors. My mother-in-law, Jenny, still not married to Patrick, wrote to him, "My darling Patrick, I've been feeling for you tonight, and I'm full of sympathy for you. They're putting more and more in the papers about this 14th Army campaign, and I feel nothing can be too good to make up for such a hell." Veteran John Giddings was one of those men in Burma living that hell.
We lost quite a number of lads through night attacks and bombing attacks, of course. That bad raid at Magui, where we lost 50 in an air raid, terrible. I suppose in a way we were always known as a Forgotten Army. The history books tell people how difficult it was, but of course it's not just like being there.
In May 1945, it was the final push.
It's mud, mud and still more mud. But Rangoon is the capital of Burma and biggest prize of the whole campaign.
Rangoon's recapture by Allied forces weakened Japan before its final surrender a few months later. As if war weren't enough, those on the front line had to contend with other, more personal matters.
Interestingly, there's a telegram here which he received a few days after his father died, which was sent, and I guess that was the kind of brutal way of receiving that news. And the detail of it, he didn't receive some 3 or 4 months later.
What does it make you feel looking at this and thinking about him? Sort of proud.
Definitely.
Everyone in the family is proud of Patrick, and we all feel we've got to know him better now as a result of making this film. And out of the horrors of the war he endured came this token of love. It's a ring that was given to him by a Japanese officer. It's got his initials engraved on it, and he wore this as his wedding ring when he finally married Jenny.